Welcome to a new year of Noir Alley. I'm your host, Eddie Muller. Our picture this week is one many people consider the ne plus ultra of film noir, the zenith of the form. It's The Big Sleep, made by Warner Brothers mostly in 1945, but not released until August of 1946, for reasons I'll get into. As for it being the definitive example of film noir, well, you won't hear that from me. It's a gorgeously made and hugely entertaining adaptation of the novel by Raymond Chandler, one of the essential books in the history of crime fiction. But even with that DNA, I hesitate to call it a representative example of film noir. Yes, it's filled with noir atmosphere, and the hard-boiled patter comes fast and furious, most of it courtesy of a guy synonymous with the film noir movement. But to me, the film version of The Big Sleep is as much a fast-paced comedy as it is a crime thriller. Its director, Howard Hawks, had scored a big hit for Warner Brothers in 1944, pairing Humphrey Bogart with 19-year-old Lauren Bacall in To Have and Have Not. That same year, RKO had a surprise success with Murder, My Sweet, the first Chandler adaptation that appreciated the writer's gift for language, both descriptive scene setting and amusing similes. Now, there are lots of versions of how The Big Sleep got to the screen. Some say Hawks shrewdly bought the rights for $20,000 and sold them to Warner's for $50 grand. Others say that after seeing RKO's success with Murder, My Sweet, Jack Warner gave Hawks $50 grand to buy the rights to Chandler's novel. Hawks rang Chandler up and asked if he'd like to see Humphrey Bogart play his fictional detective, Philip Marlowe. Chandler, who was not a fan of Dick Powell's turn as Marlowe, well, he was as tickled as a kid at Christmas, gushing that Bogart was the genuine article, a guy who could be tough without a gun. So Hawks reportedly paid the eager and naive author $5,000 for the rights to The Big Sleep and pocketed the remaining $45 grand. Probably spent it on hunting and fishing in exotic hideaways. To adapt the book, Hawks hired Lee Brackett, who was getting good reviews for a novel called No Good from a Corpse, which cribbed like crazy from Chandler. When Brackett showed up for work, Hawks was surprised to learn that he'd hired a woman. Brackett diligently tried to make sense out of the novel's labyrinthine plot. Or is it Byzantine? Every discussion of The Big Sleep, book or movie, is required to use one of those two words. As production got underway, Hawks brought in more writers, which was typical of him, including the always reliable Jules Furthman. Hawks wanted to spice things up with the breezy byplay that was the stock and trade of men and women in his movies. This badinage between Bogart and Bacall started to become the core of the film. Supporting characters darted and lurked around the periphery, while Bogey and Bacall swapped insinuating bon mots. Some scripted by William Faulkner, who was brought in to write additional scenes after the first cut played too sluggishly. Now, that first version was seen only by servicemen overseas, who were shipped advance prints of the film while the war was still going on. The official release was delayed almost a year after Warner's decided even more innuendo needed to be slung between the two stars. When Bogart wasn't back-chatting Bacall, he was making time with various women who went into heat at the mere sight of him.
You're cute.
This incarnation of Philip Marlowe is less like the lonely knight-errant Chandler created and more like the unflappable heroes of Howard Hawks' adventure films, like To Have and Have Not, which bore no relation to the Hemingway novel on which it was based. Now, it's legend now that no one involved in making The Big Sleep could make heads or tails of it. When Bogart asked Hawks who killed the chauffeur, something that seemed crucial to the plot, Hawks cabled Chandler for an answer. And he got a two-word reply: no idea. And this led Hawks to a crucial realization. If the author didn't care, why should he? So, liberated from the need to be logical, Hawks focused on being entertaining. His intuition was dead on. Keeping pace with the private eye as he puts his underpaid ass on the line in increasingly dangerous situations, that's why we read detective fiction. If the plot manages to hang together, all the better. So this isn't fatalistic film noir like Double Indemnity or Detour or The Killers. Howard Hawks was too cocksure, completely unfettered by doubt and anxiety, to make that kind of movie. He may use all the noir window dressing, but at heart, The Big Sleep is a terrific piece of tomfoolery, a self-contained fantasy that has little to do with Raymond Chandler's embittered and very earnest vision of a corrupted world. The original 1945 cut of The Big Sleep was unearthed at the UCLA Film and Television Archive in 1997. In it were expository scenes that made sense of the incomprehensible plot. Film preservationist Robert Gitt painstakingly restored the film so fans could finally figure out what was going on. Warner Brothers got some mileage out of a reissue, but people soon realized what Hawks knew all along. Comprehending a story isn't as important as enjoying it. Even Lauren Bacall got in the act, declaring that the 46 version, short on sense but stuffed with sexual innuendo, was the only one people needed to see. And who am I to argue with Lauren Bacall? I consider it screwball noir, and you may argue it's the definitive film noir. We can all agree it's one of the most wickedly entertaining detective stories ever made. Here is Howard Hawks' version of Raymond Chandler's The Big Sleep.